Welcome to the video for the third of the grammar writing slideshows. In this one, we're going to be working with sentence variety again. We are going to, first of all, begin with varying the methods of joining together ideas. Remember, each of these is going to be used in your essay, so you do need to understand them. Ideas can be joined in lots of different ways. Choppy sentences are not going to fly once you are a more mature writer. So even though when you speak your paper into a Google Doc, you may have choppier sentences, when you go back and do your editing is when you will need to combine those. So we're going to practice that right now. The first and easiest way is to join two sentences that have a compound predicate. Remember, predicate is just a verb. It may be more than one word functioning as a verb, but for some reason grammarians decided we needed more than one word for verb, and predicate was the one they chose. Go figure. All right, so a compound predicate. If you have one subject that is doing two things, there's no need to have two sentences. If you look at the bottom, the nurse silently entered the room. The nurse quickly closed the door. So we have nurse, and the nurse is the subject. The nurse is doing two things. So in order to join ideas with a compound predicate, we're going to have the nurse enter and close. So the nurse silently entered the room and quickly closed the door. We are joining it with an and, which means that it's equal on both sides, and we have a much more complex sentence structure. Combine these yourself and turn them in for credit. Notice what your subject is and have the subject do two things. What I would also like for you to do is write down whether or not they can be flipped. So in the previous example, we had the nurse silently entered the room and quickly closed the door. We could not flip that one backwards because the nurse would be closing the door and then entering the room, which doesn't work. So let me know if you can flip either of these two. Pause the video and do these two sets, please. Now we're going to combine four pair, and you're going to turn those in. I'll do the first one with you, and then you need to also write it down, but do the remainder by yourself. The pronunciation for this word right here for the plant is fuchsia, just so you know. And we're also going to try to flip them. So, she loves him. She cannot live without him. We have she as the subject. So she loves him and cannot live without him. Can we flip it? She cannot live without him and loves him. Does that work? Yes. So that one can be flipped. Some cannot. So I would like for you now to do the remaining three and tell me whether they can be flipped from the way that you put them together the first time. Pause the video now if you need to. Now we're going to work with joining ideas with what is called an ing modifier. Now this format is going to be used repetitively, but we're going to change some stuff up. We're going to make it an ed or a past tense. In this case, we're going to have it be an ing. So here is the way that we do it. We have two sentences. We have the same subject. So if you look down here, here are the two sentences that we're going to combine. He peered through the microscope. He discovered a squiggly creature. Now, technically, he has to be in the process of eyeballs to microscope before the creature is going to come into focus. So what we're going to try to do is make these two things happen at exactly the same time. Now, we can't speak them or write them at exactly the same time. So how do we do that in the way that we write it? And that would be using the ing modifier. So what we're going to do is we are going to convert the first verb into an ing verb. That's all. So instead of peered, we're going to say peering. That's it. Then we're going to drop the first subject. We don't need it anyway. And we're going to change the second verb to a past tense. Discovered. We're going to change to a past tense. It already is, so we're in good shape. Discovered. If it were discover, we would put the D on the end. Now, the key to this is that the ing has to be at the very beginning of the sentence, followed by a comma, and the remaining portion of the sentence has to be a complete sentence. So it has to have the subject, the verb, and complete thought. All right, so let's look at how this works. Peering, because we changed peered to peering, we're going to drop the first subject, he. So this is going to be peering through the microscope. Now that we don't have a subject, we have to put that comma. So there's our comma, peering through the microscope. Then we have to make sure that the second part is a complete clause, that it is a complete sentence, subject, verb, complete idea. He discovered a squiggly creature. That works. The only thing we have to make sure of is that this verb is not an ing, but it's a past tense. Since it already is, we're in good shape. So we can come down here, peering through the microscope, don't forget the comma. He discovered a squiggly creature. So what that means now is that this first part, the peering through the microscope, is discovered or is happening at the exact same time as his discovery of a squiggly creature. And even though we can't literally say them at the same time, this is how we present that they are occurring at the same time. Joining ideas with an ing modifier. So now we're going to do some more. We're going to, here are the directions. Remember, convert one of the verbs into an ing. It doesn't matter which one. Some of them are not swappable. Some are. Then we're going to drop the subject in that one because we don't need to. And we're going to make sure that the remaining portion is a complete thought. Because once we drop that subject, we turn that ing, the verb into an ing, and we drop the subject, it becomes reliant upon the remainder of the sentence for understanding, which means that it becomes subordinate. All right, so here are the two sentences we're going to put together. We drove down Tompkins Road. Okay, short, boring, complete thought though. We were surprised by the number of for sale signs. Okay, so the question becomes, can these be flipped? Can you say surprising by the number of for sale signs, or do you have to begin with the driving? So if you have to begin with the driving, which we do, we're going to change the first verb into an ing, which is driving. We're going to drop the we of the first one because we don't need two of them. So it's going to become driving down Tompkins Road, comma, which is what we have here. Driving down Tompkins Road, comma. Then the other clause has to be a complete thought. We were surprised by the number of for sale signs, which it is. So these two things now are happening at the same time in a complex sentence structure. Driving down Tompkins Road, comma, we, there's our subject, were surprised by the number of for sale signs. Alrighty, next we have made and arranges. Those are our two verbs. We need to pick which one we are going to turn into an ing. In this case, arranging or making. So does it really matter in this case? Sometimes you can switch them, sometimes you can't. I'm going to choose the second one this time and see if it works. Arranging, and we're going to drop Mary. So change arranges to arranging. Arranging rare exotic flowers in a certain symmetry. Arranging rare flowers, I forgot the word exotic, in a certain symmetry, comma. And what's the second part? Has to be a complete thought. Mary made a beautiful bouquet. All right, Mary made a beautiful bouquet. And that works. Arranging rare flowers in a certain symmetry, comma, Mary made a beautiful bouquet. Can this one be flipped? So we turn made into making and drop Mary from in front of making. Making a beautiful bouquet, Mary arranged rare flowers in a certain symmetry. That one actually works. Whereas if we try to do it with this one, surprising by the number of for sale signs, we drove down Tompkins Road. See, it wouldn't work. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So the process, convert one of your verbs into an ing. Drop the subject that's in front of that verb. Put a comma behind it and put it at the beginning of your now complex sentence. So now I want you to do these, and I want you to see if they flip. So when you do them, write down the full sentence for the combined clauses with the ing modifier and the comma. Then let me know if they can be flipped or not, and turn those in for credit. Pause here to do that work. Now the next thing that we're going to do is join ideas with a past participle modifier. Okay, remember, participle means verb. Why they have two words for it, I don't know. Past would indicate past tense. So instead of that ing, this time we're going to make a past tense. Now, why did they not call it the ed participle modifier? Sometimes past tense is not ed. So in this case, we're going to make the verb a past tense verb as opposed to an ing verb. We're going to do the exact same thing though. So the process is not different. Let's look at these. Judith is alarmed by the increase in meat prices. Judith has become a vegetarian. So first thing, we're going to make sure that this verb is a past tense verb. Now with the helping verb is, it is not, because is current present tense. So if we drop the is, which is only a helping verb anyway, and we have the verb alarmed, that becomes a past tense verb. So that works. Now remember, we're going to drop the first, or the subject that's affiliated with the verb that we're changing, so we're going to throw that one away. We're going to say alarmed by the increase in meat prices. Then we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did in the previous ing modifier. We're going to put a comma there instead of a period, and we're going to stick it on the front in front of this full sentence here, which is short and needs help. Judith has become a vegetarian, but it is a complete thought. So we're combining the two ideas. Judith is doing this one, Judith is doing that one. We only need one Judith. No offense to Judith, she's good enough on her own. And we need to drop the is, turning that into a past tense. So, alarmed by the increase in meat prices, comma, Judith has become a vegetarian. Now, the reasoning, besides not having choppy sentences, that learning these forms is helpful is that all of your sentences cannot be the same pattern over and over and over again. If they are, it gets really boring and you sound like Dr. Seuss, who made a lot of money, but he's already been done, so you can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a variety of sentence structures to keep our readers interested. The content, yeah, that's important, but how you present it is sometimes just as important. So let's look at the process again. Remember, it's the exact same one that we used for the ing modifier. So let's look at a little bit more difficult one in that we have a pronoun, because I'd rather give you the more difficult ones in the practice and explain them. The term paper was revised and rewritten. It received an A. Now, term paper in the second sentence is replaced by it. So if we think of it as term paper and they are interchangeable, we would say the term paper was revised and rewritten. The term paper received an A. That's how the word it is functioning. So we're going to drop one of them, but remember, this is the subject for both of them. And since it's probably not going to work to say received an A, comma, we could say, if we drop the was, revised and rewritten, comma, the term paper received an A. Now we have to flip term paper from the first one to the second one, because otherwise we don't know what the it is, because we're dropping all of this stuff in front of the verb. So term paper goes down to the second clause. We don't need the was. We begin with the past participle modifier, and we have a past tense verb, another past tense verb, which is fine. Revised and rewritten, we throw in the comma. The term paper received an A, period. Now, could we flip it and say, received an A, comma, the term paper was revised and rewritten? No. Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. In this case, we have to have revised and rewritten before it can get the A, which is the case with all term papers. So the student had to revise and rewrite, then the student received an A. Apparently all of these things were in the past, but these two things had to occur before this one did. So let's look at the second. Duffy was surprised by the interruption. He lost his train of thought. So the word he, the pronoun he, is a replacement for the proper noun Duffy. So Duffy is this person's name. We could say Duffy was surprised by the interruption. Duffy lost his train of thought. That's what it actually means. It sounds silly that way though. Okay, so let's try this way first. Lost his train of thought, comma, Duffy was surprised by the interruption. Lost is already in the past tense, so that one's not going to work. Now remember, we have to drop a helping verb if we have one, which is the word was. So we're going to drop Duffy and was from the first. We're going to go with surprised by the interruption, comma. Then we're going to put Duffy down here instead of the pronoun he. Duffy lost his train of thought. It would be perfectly acceptable with the pronoun he instead of Duffy, but since we lost Duffy out of the first one, let's throw Duffy into the second part. So it turns into, when we put the past participle modifier at the beginning, Surprised by the interruption, comma, Duffy lost his train of thought. Now you have Duffy doing two things. He was surprised because he got interrupted, and that caused him to lose his train of thought. Complex sentence structure says exactly the same thing as two choppy sentences, but you sound a lot smarter. So now I want you to do these. I also want you, after you write them out, to tell me whether they can be flipped. Just a simple yes or no, can they be flipped? Remember, you're going to drop one subject, turn one verb into a past tense, throw a comma on the end of that, and stick it at the beginning of the new complex sentence structure.